I'm a firm believer in the idea that video games are an inherently artistic medium, through which the people who develop these experiences express themselves in various ways. The shape of that art takes many different forms. Counter-Strike and Valorant deliver arenas of refined competition, where players express their own artfulness by honing their skills over time in order to dominate the competition. Games like The Witcher 3 or Mass Effect deliver sprawling, open-ended adventures to explore, whereas Dark Souls and Bloodborne offer equal parts pain and pleasure as you finally overcome each formidable enemy thrown your way. Regardless of what form they take, or how each developer chooses to express themselves, I do, at my core, believe video games are works of art, and the most memorable stand a step above by offering a unique delivery of this shared medium. Hellblade 2 is one of these rare gems. It features a unique narrative worth experiencing, coupled with incredible visuals and audio design, but the framing of this tale, and how you as the player experience it, are what truly sets it apart. Senua's first adventure took the opening steps into this unknown territory, exploring the struggles of mental health, portrayed in a level of detail and authenticity that we had rarely, if ever, seen before in gaming. Senua's Saga is a continuation of that story, one of tragedy and triumph, informed by the perspective of a woman suffering from psychosis, but it's also an improvement to that formula in almost every possible way. Areas found lacking before have been improved, with the best parts being elevated even further, and Ninja Theory has honed their artistic vision into a true work of art, and an excellent video game to boot. Senua's struggle with psychosis, combined with her lived experiences and the world around her, coalesce to deliver an unmissable journey that elevates the previous game's delivery to impressive new heights. I try to avoid spoilers in all of my reviews, but especially in cases like Senua's Saga, where story really is the driving force that keeps things moving, so this section will be relatively brief. Hellblade 2 picks up after the events of the first game, which, for those who didn't play the prequel or simply need a refresher, are recapped quite nicely at the start of your playthrough. I set aside time to play Senua's Sacrifice earlier this year in preparation for the sequel, and if you have yet to experience the start of this story, I cannot recommend it enough. Even if you've already completed Hellblade 2, you'll almost certainly gain a deeper appreciation for it by revisiting the protagonist's past. And it's simply a good game worth playing. Our second journey with Senua begins at sea, just off the coast of Iceland. Still tormented by the horrors she grappled with during the first game, our Pictish warrior allowed herself to be captured by the Viking raiders who ravaged her village, in a desperate bid to locate their home and defeat them there, preventing further bloodshed from being unleashed on her people. Things go awry as the Viking longboats are smashed against the shoreline by a brutal storm, stranding Senua in a foreign land with little hope of finishing her quest. Suffice it to say, she still has quite a long journey ahead of her, despite this seemingly hopeless situation. As she treks across the beautiful yet equally brutal expanse of Iceland, she'll be visited by familiar friends, like the spirit of her old mentor, Druth, and the Furies, who reprise their role as Senua's constant companions. They aren't the only ones making a return, however, and demons from her past have reappeared as well, if they ever left at all, exerting their nefarious influence whenever possible. Continued inner struggles aside, Senua is not the same woman we once knew. She has grown since we last saw her, and exhibits more strength, confidence, and control than ever before. Despite being more sure of herself, nagging doubts, both old and new, threaten to tear apart all of this fragile progress, and she must contend not only with specters from her past, but plenty of new enemies, which are no less fearsome than those she has faced before. As she traverses the Viking homeland, punctuated by beautiful time lapses when passing from one location to the next, Senua gradually attracts a small band of companions, who accompany her on this journey of justice and revenge. Watching a ragtag band of unlikely allies coalesce around Senua is a beautiful sight, even more so when you recognize the inner transformation occurring as well. As she gathers these strangers around her, helping them conquer their own demons, she eventually becomes not only a leader, but a friend as well, an accomplishment that would have seemed impossible to the Senua of old. Her journey's conclusion is equal parts heart-wrenching and fulfilling, but Ninja Theory makes it clear that Senua's saga is far from over, and I cannot wait to see where the team behind this masterful narrative chooses to take things next. I took my time exploring Iceland while savoring this adventure, and rolled credits after 7.5 hours, picking up most but not all optional collectibles along the way. Stepping back into Senua's shoes felt like a homecoming. A weird, f***ed-up homecoming if I'm being honest, but that didn't stop me from wishing there were another 7 or 8 hours waiting for me on the other side. There was plenty of discussion leading up to Hellblade 2's release around the game's length, which Ninja Theory confirmed would clock in at 6 to 8 hours, same as the prequel. While some took issue with that shorter runtime, the only problem I had was that I wanted more of Senua's story right now, because it really is that damn good. Unfortunately, we just have to wait and see what's in store for her next. Senua's Sacrifice was already a beautiful game, widely praised for its impressive visuals back in 2017, which still hold up well today, I might add. But Ninja Theory dialed things up to 11 and beyond for the sequel. It's not hyperbole to say that Hellblade 2 might be the best-looking video game I've ever played, and it's difficult to stress just how jaw-dropping each aspect of its visuals truly are. From character models to environment designs to effects and item textures, everything, and I mean everything, has been crafted with painstaking detail, and what Ninja Theory accomplished here is a shining testament to the power of Unreal Engine 5. Whether it's a visual puzzle, a character's expression during a cutscene, or the distant Icelandic skyline, every inch of Hellblade 2 oozes with stunning detail, and I often found myself stopping to take in these incredible sights, be they a massive mountain range on the horizon, or Senua's face, highlighted by bioluminescent magical lights. We got several glimpses into Ninja Theory's impressive motion capture studio leading up to release, and it's quite clear that investment paid off, as the facial animations on display are top tier, easily some of the best I've seen to date. This isn't limited to Senua either, and while she does get the most screen time, every character you meet, even those who only appear during a short cutscene, are simply stunning. Paired with these incredible visuals is an equally breathtaking soundscape, full of beautiful and diabolic tones that will send shivers down your spine in the best and the worst ways possible. The same focus on psychosis from the first game returns, and is once again delivered perfectly through its audio, with clear improvements made to an already standout element. Throughout Senua's journey, your ears will be assailed by a myriad of noises, from the eerie sound of horrifying monsters to the frantic cacophony of a volcanic eruption or oceanic typhoon. This soundscape also translates perfectly into the game's combat. The clashing of weapons, the grunts and howls of your unnatural Droiger assailants, the meaty impact of Senua slamming her blade into an enemy's neck, then yanking it out in an equally brutal display. Each sound effect is layered perfectly over the corresponding visuals, ratcheting up the tensest of moments while simultaneously elevating the more infrequent but no less important breaks of quiet reflection. Hellblade 2's soundtrack is also excellent, delivering the perfect background tracks for every moment, whether that be a blood-pounding scramble to escape a deadly giant, a moment of inner crisis within Senua's mind, or a celebration of a hard-fought victory, coupled with sadness over the comrades lost along the way. As expected, voice acting is simply impeccable, with headlining star Melina Juergens turning in another unforgettable performance. Watching the game's events unfold through Senua's eyes is more than enough to convey their emotional impact, but hearing her voice, both inner thoughts and those she conveys outwardly to others, elevates these scenes even further into the tier of unforgettable performances. The sounds that bleed through your headphones during each scene, and yes, I highly recommend playing with a headset if possible, are just incredible, as Juergens absolutely nails one of the best character deliveries I've heard in quite some time. Impressively, the supporting cast is nearly on par with Senua's standout showing, and features a range of characters who act out their respective roles perfectly, as a companion in the physical plane, or an otherworldly presence within the confines of her mind. Interestingly, Hellblade 2 features a subdued emphasis on horror elements compared to the previous title. Don't get me wrong, there are still tense, scary moments, both inside Senua's psyche and in the outside world, but compared to what came before, they seem much fewer and further between. This isn't necessarily a bad thing, more so a curious discrepancy. These were some of the prequel's most memorable moments, and a lack of equivalence here was surprising, but there are still plenty of scenes that stick with you long after the credits roll. Despite those jaw-dropping visuals and expectedly impressive audio, Senua's Saga held up exceptionally well when it came to performance, running smoothly for 99% of my playthrough with next to no bugs or major hiccups along the way. Like its predecessor, Hellblade 2 offers an extremely robust settings menu, including a built-in framerate preview based on your current selections to help gauge where things stand before even getting into the game. You can also rebind your controller inputs, a feature I'm always impressed to see, and you can even customize your in-game FPS counter. Is that a huge groundbreaking deal? Maybe not, but I have a deep appreciation for nice little touches like that in an options menu, and Ninja Theory's continued commitment to providing a strong slate of settings and accessibility levers should be commended. Running on an i9-10900 and NVIDIA 3080, playing at 1440p with settings on high across the board, I maintained a consistent 40 to 50 frames with DLSS set to balanced. Shifting DLSS to performance bumped my frames up to a consistent 60 and higher, more than enough for this style of cinematic experience, with any loss in quality being barely noticeable and the game retaining its phenomenal visuals even after those minimal tweaks. There was an absolutely massive frame drop during one particular puzzle section, chugging down to a painful 7 FPS, but this went away after a few seconds and never came back, so I'm willing to classify it as a one-off. I also noticed a bit of texture flickering. This only cropped up a handful of times and was never an eyesore for long, and clocked in as the only graphical bug I encountered. There was one single instance of an enemy's model briefly glitching out during combat, but that was the only gameplay-related snag that I encountered, and nothing ever halted my progress or affected my enjoyment. Another impressive feat. Hellblade 2's performance fared even better than the first game during my preparation playthrough earlier this year, and the uplift in graphical quality, coupled with smoother performance and fewer glitches, offered clear improvements to an already solid, yet demanding product. This game is a visual feast, regardless of whether you're playing on a high-end rig, standard PC setup, or Xbox Series console, pushing the boundaries of what games can offer in terms of their visual fidelity. Senua's Sacrifice wasn't lacking in story beats or sensory design, but where it did fall flat for many was in its gameplay. And despite enjoying it myself, I can certainly understand why certain aspects didn't hit home for others. Ninja Theory took that feedback to heart, and the biggest strides Hellblade 2 has taken are in refining its moment-to-moment gameplay, which is much improved from that first iteration. I opted for the dynamic difficulty setting, which increases or decreases the toughness of each encounter based on your prior displays of combat acumen. I only died a handful of times during my entire run, strictly during environmental traversal sections. While combat did feel tense, I rarely felt in danger of losing, so those seeking a challenge should bump up that difficulty setting a notch or two. Most complaints about the first game revolved around its puzzles and combat, both of which return here, and it makes perfect sense why so much effort was put into improving these aspects. Hellblade 2 takes the best parts of these systems and carries them forward, while improving or removing those that didn't quite click before, starting with its visual puzzles, which are a clear step up in readability, style, and the frequency with which they occur. Just like everything else, they look incredible, conveying a sense of mystery and unease, enticing you with the promise of a reward while simultaneously making you feel like unlocking its secrets might be a huge mistake. The same general puzzle design has also carried over, locating symbols hidden in the environment and matching them to a magical lock. But they now look even cooler and are much easier to understand, with the glyphs in question being more identifiable than they were before. Some new riddles have also been added, along with remixed mechanics from the first game that feel familiar yet fresh. And best of all, these puzzles occur less frequently, helping to avoid burnout from repeating the same challenges over and over again. This slate of changes transforms what used to be repeated, drawn-out affairs into shorter yet still engaging segments that don't break up progression in a negative way. Hellblade 2 also shares the same style of exploration as its predecessor, a series of on-rails spaces with hidden items to be found off the beaten path. Discoverable lore returns, but with shorter voiceovers, which is nice, as they don't drag on quite as long as they sometimes did before. There aren't any balancing acts that send you plummeting to your death, and the much-maligned follow-the-colored rocks trope is present, but overall, exploration is largely the same, for better or worse. Similarly, the focus mechanic also returns in all facets of gameplay: exploration, puzzles, and combat. Thankfully, it isn't as much of a, focus in combat as it was before, although activating this slow-motion ability can still save you in moments of dire necessity, and remains a powerful tool without being as much of a crutch to lean on. The one thing I was most excited to try in Hellblade 2 were improvements to its combat, something Ninja Theory was more than happy to mention every chance they got leading up to release. As it turns out, this wasn't without good reason, and the experience of piloting Senua in battle is markedly improved, delivering some of the most intense, thrilling, and visceral video game combat I've ever experienced. I actually didn't mind the combat in Senua's Sacrifice, but there's no denying it felt very gamey, chaining your perfect parries again and again, while Senua switched her lock-on from one oversized target to the next, as the few types of enemies present came at you in waves on repeat. All made the experience feel quite arcadey, not unforgivably abysmal, but barely attempting to fool you into forgetting you are, in fact, playing a video game. In Hellblade 2, nothing could be further from the truth. And while some aspects of combat do feel similar, they are all less rigid, more authentic, and noticeably free-flowing compared to what came before. Yes, there are still enemy attack patterns to memorize, blocks and dodges require proper timing to execute, and enemy variety is still relatively limited, but each time you're thrown into a new encounter feels like living out a high-budget action film. Instead of sending multiple foes lumbering towards you at the same time, Hellblade 2's combat is a series of brutal, one-on-one duels. Some of the tensest, most intimate encounters I've ever fought through. As each enemy comes at you, a new type of puzzle unfolds, as you identify their attacks, react accordingly, and wear down each opponent until ending that fight once and for all, often with a brutal, satisfying finisher, before the next Viking warrior or undead abomination takes their place. A mix of light, heavy, and special enemies will test your mettle with varying movesets, including special attacks that ignite you with flames, blur your vision with sand, or disorient you after a particularly heavy strike. These small additions not only keep you on your toes, but add more flavor and tension to each fight, and you can often feel Senua's panic after being blinded or caught off guard by one of these attacks. Many confrontations are also punctuated by extra on-screen action. As you dispatch your latest enemy, the camera might pan to show you another combatant executing a helpless townsperson or allied soldier, then turning their attention towards you as their next potential victim. Your comrades will fight alongside you at times, popping in and out for a brief exchange of dialogue, or to team up against a group of enemies before being sucked back into the chaotic whirlwind of combat. In some sequences, Senua is forced to confront more otherworldly adversaries, and these fights do feel a bit flatter than the rest of Hellblade 2's combat, mostly due to a slight difficulty in identifying each attack pattern due to the design of these particular models. That being said, the instances in question were rare, and what they lacked in mechanics was more than made up for by the pure visual spectacle of fighting these ghostly assailants. Hellblade 2's approach to boss design included a mix of combat-heavy encounters and mechanics-based challenges, both of which were largely enjoyable. Your toughest opponents adhere to a similar formula as rank-and-file foes, and these fights are equally visceral, intense, and visually stunning, offering a higher level of challenge thanks to opponents with unique skill sets that require a keen eye and patience to overcome. The mechanically focused alternatives also offer a solid challenge, but lean more heavily into visual spectacle than outright difficulty. While they did manage to stop me once or twice before reaching completion, this was mostly due to trial and error, and while I certainly enjoyed working my way through them, that enjoyment came more from the emotional payoff and memorable scenes unfolding before me than a sense of accomplishment from overcoming the obstacles placed in my path. All of these details combine to make combat feel, for lack of a better term, real. That previously gamified design has been replaced with a system that, while certainly not an avenue for expression of skill like God of War, Dark Souls, or Sekiro, delivers something both unique and memorable. And Hellblade 2 is worth a playthrough just to experience some of the coolest, most visceral, and visually impressive sequences out there. Senua's Saga isn't a perfect game, but it is a perfect expression of the art that Ninja Theory sought to convey, and will long be remembered for its unwavering vision and the studio's commitment to seeing it through. Any type of art can attract an audience, but video games in particular face a unique dilemma: providing an art form that is pleasing to see and hear, but also enjoyable to actually play, and this sequel is a resounding success on that front as well. The second part of Senua's journey is bigger, bolder, and better than the first, an impressive feat when looking back at the quality of that first installment, and is a step up in every conceivable way. Things found lacking have been addressed, and its greatest strengths were doubled down on and made even better, resulting in not only a standout sequel, but an artistic masterpiece. Continuing its hallmark blend of Norse mythology and the struggles of mental health, while providing a refined, well-tuned, cinematic gameplay experience, Senua's Saga propels itself into a tier of games that have mastered the delivery of their vision, a vision I expect will have many returning for more in the future. How successful the game is in Microsoft's eyes is another question entirely, and that thought conveys no warmth or comfort. But regardless of what the bean counters might think, Ninja Theory should be incredibly proud of this product, and Hellblade 2 has cemented itself as the best kind of game, one I will never forget playing. If recent rumors are to be believed, and reporting from reputable sources lends credence to them, the next Hellblade game has already been greenlit for development, which is certainly a welcome sign for the series' future, and the future of Ninja Theory as well. After what went down with Tango Gameworks and Hi-Fi Rush, those assurances certainly carry less weight than they did before, but I'm hopeful that they do turn out to be true, and Senua's journey continues, because her tale is far from over, and is more than worth seeing through to its eventual conclusion, wherever that might take our Pictish protagonist, and us along the way. Thanks for watching. Make sure to like and subscribe for more gaming content, and let me know your thoughts on Hellblade 2 in the comments below. You're a real one and I appreciate you. Catch you later, homies.